Spark, which is part of our ongoing customer service weekly TV broadcast that we have here at the Customer Service Weekly. Now, I'm actually getting a particular error as I'm going live right now. I'm looking at my YouTube feed. It's not popping up. Hopefully it'll show soon. I'm showing I've been live for 15 seconds, but I'm also getting an error saying that we don't have enough video to maintain a smooth stream. We're pumping it out here. Roy, you pumping it out? I'm pumping it out.
I'm pumping it, baby.
Man, we are pumping it. So hopefully this will clear up. Yep, I think it's coming live right now. The feed is coming through. All right, so if you have any issues, you can also, look on the chat window. We're also going to take a replay of this Midday CX Spark and make it available. We're going to post it in on our blog. That's going to be available as well. So today we're going to be talking with Roy Atkinson, who, to me, he's a Hall of Famer. He has made a significant impact in the support, customer service, and customer experience industries for many years. He's an extremely wise man because he has a diverse background in a lot of things, including being a musician. And I think you still play, don't you, Roy?
I have been known to occasionally hum anyway.
That's for sure. But we're going to talk about something that he often runs into, which is a problem associated with people mistaking customer experience design for customer experience. Now, for me, Roy, I think there's a strategy element that's associated with customer experience. But I really want to get an understanding of what you're meaning in regards to this particular issue. What do you mean by this confusion? What do you mean by this mistake and roadblock and hindrance?
Well, I think, Jim, that a lot of times we are looking from the inside out, and we build personas that represent our customers. We work hard to think through and map their experience, but ultimately the experience belongs to the customer. You may have a very well thought out strategy for how you're going to deliver what it is that you deliver to your customers and try to approach them on their ground. But at the same time, not everybody likes roller coasters. Right? Not everybody likes plastic bottles. Not everybody likes whatever it is that you're giving them. People react in different ways. And so I think that we should design from the customer experience perspective, but we also have to realize that when we get to the last step, they're the ones that are experiencing. And so what becomes incredibly important at that point is getting as close to real-time feedback from your customers as is possible. Luckily, we have a lot of technology that'll do that for us now.
Okay. Now, when you start talking about the technology elements, you're right. There is a lot. There's a lot of technology that will do it post-mortem. There's more and more technologies coming out that'll do it in real time. But if you can, kind of help me think about, when I think about, there's two components here. There's the data collection element, and then there's the, insight and action-based element. And that can be that has to be more post-mortem. That can't be in real time. But some of these tools are actually helping with response and helping with access of insight in real time. So is that kind of what you're alluding to?
Yes, I think that we can almost watch our customers do things in real time because so much of what we do now is done online, especially these days where we're in pandemic mode. People are working remotely, shopping remotely, learning remotely, doing everything that they do. We can monitor what their actions are. And we can say, okay, they were on this page. We wanted them to be on this page for a period of time, but they stayed there for 4 seconds. Well, there's negative sentiment involved in that. They had a different reaction from what we expected. So I think we can get a lot of real-time feedback, as you say. But then there's the sentiment analysis. But that, luckily, these days, emerging technologies are filling in that gap too, because we have AI and machine learning to help us. And it's insanely fast how you can get that analytic feedback and even predictive analytics, as you know.
Yeah, but as you're talking, I still, want to be very, very cautious and leading people to believe that it's kind of a plug and play scenario. This is not plug and play. What is required?
Well, the first thing you have to do is make sure that you're collecting the right data, and that you have enough to make it worthwhile. What people a lot of times don't realize about the emerging technologies of artificial intelligence, if we can call it that, and machine learning, require large amounts of data, and a lot of organizations just don't have enough to feed and train these technologies. There is training required. Uh, for example, one of the things that we know is we go to a site and we have to use a CAPTCHA. And we have to say, show me all the crosswalks. We're training autonomous vehicles when we do that. A lot of people don't realize that. What's a traffic light look like? Oh, it looks like that one, that one, that one, that one. Okay, so that information goes back and feeds a database, which goes to train autonomous vehicles to recognize traffic lights. So there are definite drawbacks for smaller organizations, mid-sized organizations. So you have to have a lot of data. It's got to be good data, and it has to be pertinent data. That's another thing where, okay, you have to figure out what elements of the customer journey are you really interested in tracking, and what's going to give you the best knowledge of how your customers are responding to you.
Well, as you're talking, I start thinking about the difference between us being very reactive, in a customer service or support environment. I mean, you are now just totally shifting the paradigm to have to do a heck of a lot more type of planning work and investigative work before we even start serving and supporting a customer. Is that correct?
I think you can serve and support your customers with with the knowledge that you have to start collecting as much data as you can and picking and choosing what you're going to pay attention to along the way. So that's where the customer experience management part comes in. You have to decide what you're going to pay attention to, but you also have to, the other side of that coin is that you have to see what your customers are paying attention to and how they're reacting positively and negatively. So yes, it is a lot of work. And that's the thing a lot of people don't realize too. When they talk about AI, they think, well, the AI does everything I need. No, it doesn't. You have to lay a lot of groundwork, and you have to make the decisions. That's where the human pattern recognition and deciding capabilities come in. You have to understand what's important to your business and what's important to your customers, and make those two things meet in the middle.
And I want to make sure that everybody, is given the right information. I mean, we're not talking about AI in of itself. In other words, to me, when you were talking, I have to actually be more averse and understanding and have speech analytics capabilities. Because if we're talking about mining voice data, and then
Mm-hmm.
it's text, analytics, and,
Mm-hmm.
and even when you start talking about those technologies, they vary in regards to how that they handle and are able to identify, the text and the speech that is happening within customer interactions. So this is really almost like a stack and a process and an overall framework is that we're talking about here.
It is absolutely that. I mean, the underlying uh, technology of artificial intelligence, machine learning, underlie natural language processing, NLP, which we're getting more and more familiar with all the time, and with the analytics also. But those are the pieces that we need to pay attention to in the customer world, and they are of huge help. I mean, when you think about the capability of translation that we have now, almost everywhere. It used to be expensive and complicated to do translation. You had to hire people to do translation. Now you get it on the fly. Is it great? As a multiple language speaking person? No, it's not. So you have to be careful of what you're translating, because a lot of times it doesn't mean, in the words of Inigo Montoya, it does not mean what you think it means. But the capability is there, and it's usually useful to us in understanding and conveying information to our customers.
Okay, so kind of going back full circle, we talked about people mistaking CX design for CX.
Mhm.
If you could kind of give us an understanding of where you see that happening most often. I mean, we've kind of had some dialogue here, but I want to make sure that we leave this midday CX spark with something that people can take to help ignite their CX celebration today as well as all year long.
So I think that where I see the mistake happening is that people talk about CX when they really mean CX design.
Mm.
Uh, they say, well, we have to make our CX unique. Well, you can't make the customer experience unique. You can make your approach to the customer experience unique. Your customers are going to experience your product or service on their own terms. What you have to do is design it to be the best you know how, based on what you know about your customers. And what you know about your customers is enabled by some of these new technologies. In addition to just having conversations. How do we get to know each other? We have conversations. And have those conversations through all the technology that's available to you. And some of it is just great, great stuff. Really, some of the emerging technologies are wonderful.
So when I start thinking about the whole executive buy-in, when I start thinking about the whole executive thinking, when I think about, what am I doing now in order to be able to impact and improve that customer experience, and even, quite frankly, the employee experience. I mean, what you're telling me is I have to do a total rethink and shift in regards to what that CX design and strategy is because of a couple things: data and the amount of data I have, the technology that I may or may not have, the way that I go about, tagging or teaching, framing, structuring, as well as access. One of the things that comes out to me that I see also as an important issue is access to enterprise information,
Yes.
because we have data in all these different sources that could create a problem. All of these factors are potential, roadblocks in regards to moving from the whole CX design component to actually delivering a customer experience. What else kind of stands out to you?
I think you put your finger on a number of things right there. And getting to proactive is really where we want to be. And that's where the design element comes in. How can we deliver better to our customers and assist them in having a great experience with our product or service? That's the design component. And I think that, again, getting that real-time feedback is super, super important. But also, you talked about, the huge amount of data that we have, the data pools that we have. Make sure that you have insight into those. And the broader you can scope that out in the enterprise, the better off you are. And the other component that you mentioned, which I was going to get to, so you beat me to it, is the employee experience and how that underpins the customer experience, how important it is to make sure that your employees are engaged with you, that they're focused on your mission, because when everybody's pointed in the same direction, things just work out better. If the seagulls aren't facing all into the wind when they're sitting along the pier, some of them are going to get blown off, and you don't want that to be your organization. You want to be making sure that everybody in your organization is facing in the same direction and pulling toward the same mission.
Okay, so we have some pitfalls, we have some roadblocks, we have a whole lot of opportunity. So what is essentially the light at the end of this tunnel that we need to focus in order to get us where we want to go?
Well, I think the light at the end of the tunnel, obviously, is your organizational success. And that happens when your customers are successful. They're going to come back. You're going to get repeat business. You're going to get referral business, which, as we know, is extraordinarily valuable. That word of mouth, however it happens on social media or through reviews online or however that works for your organization. That's really what you want, is growth. And the way that you get it is keeping your current customers and adding new ones. Right?
Okay, so that's I think you bring up a really vital, important point, is when we start looking at, oftentimes, a lot of the things that we do tactically. So we take our strategy and we convert it to tactical, activities, processes, practices, policies, metrics. Oftentimes we see those as costs of doing business and expenses. But what you just said to me is that there's a whole value model to this that we really need to pay attention to.
There's a huge value model to it. And as you know, I come from an information technology background, and among others. And one of the frameworks that's very popular in the world is called ITIL, ITIL. And ITIL 4, the latest version of ITIL, talks about value streams and how getting the value to the customer and the co-creation of value is where the business really happens, right? Making sure that you're meeting the customer, because value is created when your product or service meets the customer. It's not independent of that interface. And that's goes back right back to the customer experience. That's where the customer experience happens as well. So those two things are joined together, value and customer experience. I lost your audio.
Oh, I'm sorry. I just wanted to say that I had a good time with you today. Can you please share with all those CX Igniters how they can get in touch with you besides you being a senior contributor to the Customer Service Weekly at customerserviceweekly.org?
Well, thank you for that. And you can reach me via cliftonbutterfield.com. That's our company website. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Twitter, both under my own name, Roy Atkinson. And I'd be just pleased as punch if you would reach out and connect.
Roy, thanks for sharing your wisdom with us today and helping us ignite a CX celebration all year long.
Thank you, Jim.